Hello friends and welcome back for another YouTube video. This is Cassie. Today I have the Brutus Monroe July 2020 Magical Mouse Inspiration Box. It is sold out, but most of the items are still available, so I will have those linked down below. Before we get too into the card ideas, I did want to show you that I had stamped out all the images from the set, which is that adorable mouse set, and I stamped those out using some Raven Detail ink onto this alcohol marker cardstock. I colored those with my colored pencils because this paper is super smooth. It's perfect for both alcohol markers and colored pencils, and I used the Arteza Expert color pencils. And then I went ahead and I fussy cut all of those little images out. I didn't show you all the coloring because that's not really what this video is about. It's more about the ideas. But yeah. Alright, so let's get started with our first card. I did pull out one of the foilable panels and I'm going to ink blend on it. I'm using my Simon Hurley inks. I'm starting with some Sike ink and I'm just kind of randomly putting that on there because honestly my idea was actually a galaxy background. I know it seems very unconventional with this type of foilable. It looks like flowers and it's beautiful. But I thought I would try to go a different route with this. My next color is Rosy Cheeks, and I'm just blending those on using some blender brushes. My next color will be some Clear Skies, and I love how these layer over the top of each other. They blend really pretty and get you whole different colors. So now I've got some green in there, and I've got orange where the Sike and the Rosy Cheeks overlapped. It's just beautiful. And so I know it's not really looking like a galaxy background right now, but stick with me, we'll get there. Might have to kind of think a little and it might be a little abstract, but I think that's kind of the fun of creating is just, if you have an idea in your head, give it a shot. That last color was Crown Me. And then we're going to bring in some of that Raven Detail ink and we're going to blend that around the edges just to kind of soften those, kind of deepen them up a little bit with the, not deepen, and not soften. I want to subdue them a little bit. That's what I want to do. And so I kind of rubbed that all over. And no, it really doesn't look like a galaxy, but you get the gist. All right, we're going to stamp out our sentiment onto some more cardstock, and then we're going to trim that out with our guillotine trimmer. I'll do this with most of the sentiments that I create for all of my cards. We'll just line those up in my guillotine trimmer one way or another. And then I'm going to use some foam tape on the back of our little shooting stars. And then I'm going to trim down some of this pearlescent cardstock that came in the kit. I'm going to cut 4 half-inch panels from this particular panel. This panel was cut down to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, which is the whole front, like of an A2 size card. But I need 4 half-inch panels because I'm going to plan to put a couple on the inside and a couple on the outside. And this panel itself also measured 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, but I'm going to trim off 1/4 inch from each of the long sides. And so that'll obviously equal out to be a 1/2 inch. Now my card base is some Not Your Mama's Heavyweight cardstock, and I like to decorate the insides of mine. I'm not going to go too crazy decorating this one, but we are going to put something on there just to tie everything together. I'll take some of that pearlescent cardstock and I'll just put that right up along both edges using some liquid glue. I'll put another strip of glue down, and then I'll put down one of the little 1/4 inch chunks from the foilable. And then I'll do it on the other side as well. And so it just kind of ties the inside to the outside. I love doing something like that. And this does give a lot of room to write for your recipient or to your recipient. I just enjoy doing that. All right, for the outside, we're going to take those little 1/2 inch strips and we're going to put those on each of the edges of the outside. And that'll just give it a nice little border on the left and right hand side. And then we'll get ready to decorate our panel. I'm going to glue down my sentiment using that same liquid glue. And then, like I said, I have foam tape on the back of my little shooting star. So we'll peel off that foam tape. And I'm going to use a retractable pick for this. So we'll just peel off the backing paper there, and then we'll be able to stick down each of those little shooting stars around that Make-A-Wish. So we have this fun little, could be a birthday card, that's kind of what I'm going for, or something else. But we won't stop there. I am going to pull in that hyperpigment. This is that rose gold hyperpigment. And basically what hyperpigments are is what it says. It's a very pigmented medium. I learned that this last weekend. And so if you're curious about what those are, it's just a very pigmented medium. You can paint them directly like this to get a very pigmented look, or you could splatter them, which I'm going to do here in a bit, or you could even watercolor with them basically. I haven't tried actually using water, but I did use the blending solution that Brutus Monroe carries in the store, and that worked really nicely. So we'll put this inside of our splatter box. I'm going to cover up the sentiment because I don't want too much splatter to cover that. Put a little bit more in our stamp block, and then we're going to splatter that all over the background, almost like stars, I suppose. It just seemed to work if I was going for a galaxy background. And while it's a very abstract galaxy background, I'm not going to lie, I love this card. I love the color, I love the vibrancy, and there you can take a look at how pretty that splatter looks on there, because this is not only a rose gold hyperpigment, but it also has some shimmer to it, which is lovely. And then I'll attach this down to our card base using that same liquid glue. And then you'll see we have that pearlescent card poking through on the left and right hand side. And that's actually going to finish off our first card. So happy with this one. It's vibrant, it's pretty, it's just fun. A couple of you had asked me what the foilables actually were and what that really meant and how to do it. So I've got a foilable here, and what that means is it was printed with a laser printer. And so that ink that you see on there with the black circles, that will take the lamination, or not the lamination, the foil really well when you throw it through the laminator. So what I'm doing is I am using some Slippery When Wet Simon Hurley Create ink, and I'm just blending that all over that panel and kind of concentrating some darker color on the edges. And then we're going to get ready to run this through our laminator with some foil. I have some gold shattered glass deco foil. I've cut that down to cover the panel. And I have a piece of copy paper that I have folded in half. I'm just going to stick this inside the copy paper. Keep in mind I'm kind of going double time. This is sped up twice, so this is not as quick as it would go. And then you're just going to run this through your laminator. Kind of try to figure out how your laminator works. Mine is an Amazon Basics, so it's not an expensive one, and it works fine. You might need a shim. I find that this works fine for me. And I've also found that when you have images that are big and bold, it works that much better. Here's the image we're going to be using on the front of this foilable. But I did want to show you that I run mine through 3 to 4 times, but when it's a big image, like a big bold image that I'm trying to foil, twice sometimes works plenty. And so I'll show you here in a second how you can tell. You don't want to try pulling back to figure it out because you can mess that up. But if I take a look at this in the light and I can see that it is really pressed down where those circles are, then I know that it adhered. And then I will peel that away super slowly, and you'll see that it adhered beautifully. Once again, I think it's because it's a big, bold image, and I love how that looks. So what do you guess I was going for with that? Cheese! All right, so we will foil another one, but I love foiling. I just think it's such a beautiful look. It's an easy thing to do, and the fact that these foilables are included in the kits is just, oh, I hope they never stop doing that. I'm going to just take a few of the images that I had, and I'll kind of try and see where I want those. But now we have our card base, and of course I have to decorate the inside. So I've got my little mouse on the rainbow, and we're going to ink that up with that Slippery When Wet ink, and we'll stamp that down. Another reason I love these Simon Hurley Create inks is that they're good for so many purposes. Blending, stamping, all that. I do want to stamp my sentiment, but it is too big for the inside of this card, so I'm going to do part of the sentiment, and then I'll do the other part. I know lots of folks can cut apart their stamps. I am just not one of those. If you watch me at all, you know that I can't do it. I just can't do it. So I inked up the other part. I didn't clean off my stamp perfectly, as you can see, so there is some residual next to the "To Know You," but I'll just take my mono sand eraser, and that works perfectly to get rid of that. So the inside is done. I'll just make sure that the crease is good, and then we'll get ready to start adhering our pieces. I just have a piece of white cardstock that I had to cut down to, I think it's 2 3/4 inches, and I'll just stick that on top with a little bit of liquid glue. I did stamp my sentiment and give it a fishtail banner, and then I also, like I said, fussy cut all the images out. I'm going to pop those up using some Brutus Monroe foam tape, so I'll put that all over the back of all of my images and my sentiment. I'll peel off the release paper, and then I'll start adhering all of those pieces down. My camera had a few issues, so it did shut down, but you will see, and you kind of get the gist after you see what it looks like. I'll put a little bit of glue on the top of the clouds to adhere those as well. And here is what card number 2 looks like. I figured at the end of a rainbow for mice might be some cheese, so this just resonated in my head. All right, so that finishes card number 2. Okay, for card number 3, we're going to show foiling one more time. So I have another foilable panel, and I'm going to cover this with some of that Clear Skies Simon Hurley Create ink. Just blend that all over there and kind of give it that sky look. I thought this would just be a lot of fun. And then the foil that I have over there is the Rainbow Shattered Glass Deco Foil. I just thought all these colors would bring in the rainbow. We'd have just a very vibrant, pretty card. And so we'll go through the same process again. I'll just take that, wipe up my mess, and then I'll put the foil over the top of my foilable, put that inside my copy paper. And when I mentioned shim earlier, all I meant was like another piece of cardstock, either under or below it. But I didn't need it in these cases. And these images, or this image in particular, is not quite as bold, but the lines are still bold enough that I just have to run this through a couple of times. And as I said, you just have to know your foiling machine, see what works, whether or not you need a cardstock shim or not. Just kind of play around with it. But I will say that, at least with me, I just have better luck when the images aren't super, super detailed. If they are, I tend not to try to foil those. Keep in mind you can ink blend like I did, or use Copic markers, or just about any medium might work as long as it doesn't cover up that lasered image. And so I'll peel that away super slowly, and it was pretty much a flawless foiling, which happens sometimes and sometimes it doesn't, but in these bolder images it sure does. Oh, love that. So we're going to bring in the sun, and we're going to bring in that super cute cloud. I do have one of the circle foundation dies that I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine over some of the yellow cardstock that came in the kit. And then I'll get ready to stamp a sentiment. Again, this was one that was a little too big to go on the outside, so I'm going to stamp it separate. I did a better job of cleaning my stamp this time. And I'm just stamping that onto some more of that white cardstock. And then I am going to stamp the full image just to see the full sentiment. And then we'll trim all those out using my guillotine trimmer. We're also going to trim down my panel just a little bit, 1/4 inch on each side, because we're going to put those on the inside of the card as well. And then we'll get ready to start adhering our pieces. I'm going to adhere my foilable down to the front of my card base, which is once again some more of your Not Your Mama's heavyweight cardstock. And then I will adhere down my circle, and I'm going to have that sticking off to the side. When that's dry, I'll trim off the excess. And then I'm going to glue down my little sun and my little cloud. And if those don't make you happy, oh my goodness, I don't know what would. So cute. Their little faces are just too much. And then once that's down, we'll kind of take a look at our sentiment. I will save the one that I completely stamped out. That one I'll save for another card. But this one, when I've got it figured out how I want to put that down, we'll just use that same liquid glue and adhere those down. And before I finish off the outside, I'm going to glue down the little strips on the inside, just like we did before. And we're leaving plenty of room to write to my recipient. I figure with a card like this, when you're saying sunny days are ahead, you might need to send more than just a signature. You might need a whole little note in there, and that's plenty of room for that. All right, we'll make sure that we have our good crease. And then we're going to pull out some of the sequins that came in the kit. I am just pulling out some of the gold ones this time, and I'll put those all over the front. I'm pretty liberal with how I spread those out. And then I am going to grab out that rose gold hyperpigment again. We will paint that onto our sun. I put it just kind of where I thought some shadowing might be. And I liked that so much that I end up taking that and painting the rays of the sun as well. And it doesn't, I think it's fun because it doesn't really cover up what I had colored underneath, but it does enhance it. And then I'll splatter the background as well. And that's going to finish off card number 3, another foiled pretty one. So don't be afraid of foiling, give it a try. It might be something that you really enjoy. And there's plenty of foiling products in the Brutus Monroe store. For card number 4, we're going to use those fun dies that came in the kit. And I just taped those together with some purple tape and ran those over the cardstock that came in the kit. Each one of the colors, the leaves I stuck to the browns, and then the colored cardstock, I used those for all the flowers. I have another one of the foilables, but I'm not going to foil it this time, but I am going to ink blend. I'm starting with some Overzealous Simon Hurley Create ink, and I'm just going to do the entire panel with some of that Overzealous. And then I'm going to move up to my darker color, which is Later Gator. I'm using the Pink and Main Ergonomic brush that is in the Brutus Monroe store as well. I love this thing when you're doing big backgrounds. It's fantastic. So I've got that going. And I'm going to go about halfway up and just get lighter as I go up. But this just wasn't dark enough for me, so I will pull out the brand new Simon & Hurley Create ink, which is called Fake Plant. And I'm going to just start at the bottom. We'll have this beautiful ombre green going all the way up to the top, and I just love how that looks. And then we'll get ready to start kind of thinking about how we're going to put our flowers on there. And we'll go through the whole process because that did take a little bit of time just kind of thinking it out. But I'll start gluing all those pieces together, think about where I want them, just using some liquid glue. You could pop some up with some foam tape if that's something that you wanted to do. But I'll start adhering all those pieces down, just using that same liquid glue when I think I have them kind of where I want them. And you'll see I layered up some of those pieces on the flowers, which is super, super fun with this die set. I just love that. You could have those pieces separate or you could layer them, just lots of possibilities. I'll stamp out my sentiment, which is just thank you, my friend. And then I do trim it down because I wanted that one in half as well. Because of the way I have this card laid out, it just wouldn't fit all the way across. So I'm going to put this on, and I'm not going to put it straight. I want it to be a little bit wonky because the background is a little bit wonky. So I just thought that was fun. We'll bring in some more of that rose gold pigment, hyperpigment. We'll put that over the leaves. We'll put that on the flowers. We're even going to splatter that background as well with that. And then for the inside of our card, we'll take our leftover pieces and we'll adhere those down just using some of that same liquid glue. Yeah, again, not going through that whole process of how I layered things up or how I decided what was going to go where. We're just putting it down. And then we're also going to splatter the inside. I figured I really wanted to tie some of that in, so we're going to splatter the inside. We'll even paint a little bit on the flowers and the leaves, just a little bit to make those kind of cohesive with the outside as well. And then we'll hit that with the heat tool. You'll definitely want to make sure that that's dry before you close it up. And then I'll adhere my card panel down to my card base, which covers the whole card base. And then we'll adhere down some sequins. We're using just a couple of different colors. The only one we don't use is the gold this time. So we're using more of the bronze and more of the brown. And we'll adhere those down. And then that's going to finish off card number 4. I really love how this one turned out too. I have to tell you, I loved this kit, but the more I worked with it, the more I was falling in love with it. Alright, for my final card for this kit, we are going to build a scene. So I'm just using what leftover ink I have on my ergonomic brush, blending that across the bottom of the panel. I'm going to do the same thing with some blue, just using what's left on my brush. And then I'll bring in some yellow as well. I now have brushes for each of the color families, so I don't have to clean off my brushes as frequently. The ergonomic brushes I do because I only have one, hoping to get a couple more. Alright, what I want to do is I want to bring in that sun stencil that came in the kit, and I'm going to pull in some banana split velveteen glaze. This stuff is different than the chroma glaze because it dries as a matte finish. And it's almost, they call it velveteen because it has almost like a velvet touch. I am not usually very patient to let it dry on its own, but I think you'd even get better results if you just kind of let it air dry on its own. But I always seem to be in a rush, so I never am able to do that. But I do love the look. The matte look is very cool. So I've spread that. I'm going to go clean off my stencil, and then I'm going to try something. I wanted to experiment. So what I'm doing is I put some of that rose gold pigment, the hyperpigment, onto my glass mat, and I'm using a paintbrush, and I am basically painting the wet velveteen glaze. Now, I'm not dipping my brush into the glaze. I'm not moving it around. I'm just pouncing the color onto the glaze. I'm not sure if this is going to stick. I'm not sure at this point if this is going to work at all, or if once it's dry it rubs off. At this point I have no idea, but I wanted to try. Let me be your guinea pig. And essentially it actually worked really well. So I got all that pounced on there. I love that it kind of is a different color than the rest of it. And it has a shine to it. So we have the matte finish, and then, well, it's not matte yet, it still looks pretty glossy, and then the other will be shiny. So again, I couldn't wait, and my my impatience got in the way and I stuck my finger right in it and I pulled some of that glaze up. It was not completely dry, even though I used my heat tool on the lowest setting. So in order to try to salvage this piece, I am just going to take some more of that hyperpigment and I'm going to pounce it into what I screwed up with my finger. I got impatient, and honestly, this ends up working okay. I like that it adds some shadowing to the sun a little bit, and there's a little bit of texture. Not necessarily what I wanted, but it's okay, and I like the matte of the sun, and that hyperpigment didn't wipe away, which is nice. Alright, so now I'll just adhere all of my leftover pieces. This is everything I had left from what I had cut and colored earlier. And I'm just going to adhere those down to the front of my card to make a little scene. And I'll put 3 of those flowers, or all 3 of the flowers, on the outside. And a few of our little elements on the outside as well. Just such fun little images. I love how whimsical these are. They're just so much fun. You could stamp them in colors, I bet, too. And then, you know, have that be a part of your background for a background scene. And I love these little ants carrying the little berries. They're so cute. Perfect. And then this is the sentiment that I had stamped earlier, so I cut that down as well to fit on the front of this panel. And this panel is a little bit smaller than an A2 size card, so I have this cut down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, because I plan to try to make a little bit of a border around it with some more cardstock. So once I've got everything adhered to the front, I'm going to pull out another piece of cardstock that will measure the full front of an A2 size card, and I'm going to take that rose gold and I'm basically just going to paint it all along the edges of this piece of cardstock. This is not watercolor cardstock, so it will warp a little bit, but I'm trying not to bring in any water, and you know, this is a wet medium, so keep that in mind if you try to do something like this, that it will warp your paper just a little bit. So I'll paint what I have left over onto my flowers and the berries, and we're just having a good old time with that hyperpigment. And then I'm going to adhere down my panel to this next panel, the rose gold panel. And this is where I discovered that it's, you know, kind of warped. And so when we try to attach it to our card base, we're definitely going to need to use, you could use liquid glue, but in this case I wanted to get rid of all the warping, so I'm using some 1/8 inch score tape, and then I'll peel off all the release paper of that, and then I will adhere my card panel right down to my card base, which is some more of that Not Your Mama's Heavyweight cardstock. Just being careful, because when I use glue like this, you know, you only get one shot. That's usually why I like the liquid glue. You can wiggle it. And then I'll take the very few leftover pieces that I have and I'll adhere those down to the inside. We have a butterfly, a bee, and 1 leftover ant. And that'll take care of all the pieces that I cut and colored. And that's going to finish off our 5th and final card. Another fun one. If I had been just patient, I think that it would have turned out even better, but I do think that stencil is a fun stencil. All right, let's take a look at all 5 of the cards that I made today using this kit. I would love to know which one was your favorite. If you did, in fact, have a favorite, please leave that down in the comments section down below. I always read your comments, and I do my best to respond to all of them. Y'all are so amazing. Yeah, so if you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.